The coaching carousel is spinning out of control in Cleveland, and nobody knows where it's going to stop. While fans are screaming for change, while Shedeur Sanders is fighting for his professional life, and while the entire NFL watches one of football's most dysfunctional franchises try to fix itself, one name keeps surfacing in whispers, rumors, and insider reports: Mike McDaniel, the offensive mastermind from Miami, the guy who's supposed to be getting fired himself, is somehow being talked about as the Browns' savior. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. He's not the Browns' coach yet, and he might never be. The situation is messier, more complicated, and more dramatic than anyone could have imagined. And at the center of it all is a fifth-round quarterback with everything to prove and nothing guaranteed. If you want to stay ahead of every twist, every turn, and every insider leak in this wild NFL offseason, you need to hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is about to get even crazier than you think.
Let's start with where we are right now, because the timing of all this couldn't be more perfect or more disastrous, depending on how you look at it. It's January 2026, and the Cleveland Browns just wrapped up another nightmare season. 4 wins, 12 losses. Another year in the basement. Another year of quarterback chaos. Another year of wondering if this franchise will ever get it right. Kevin Stefanski, the 2-time Coach of the Year, the guy who was supposed to be the answer, is sitting on the hot seat with the flames licking at his shoes. And the entire football world is waiting to see if Monday becomes Black Monday for him. But here's where it gets interesting. While everyone's talking about Stefanski's future, another coach hundreds of miles away in Miami is facing his own reckoning. Mike McDaniel, the young offensive guru who took the Dolphins to back-to-back playoff appearances in his first 2 seasons, is suddenly fighting for his job, too. The Dolphins are finishing with a losing record after going 7-9. The team fired general manager Chris Greer back on Halloween, and now there are serious questions about whether McDaniel survives the purge. For weeks, people thought he was safe. The Dolphins won 6 of 9 games after the GM got canned, and owner Stephen Ross seemed ready to bring him back. But then something shifted. ESPN's Dan Graziano reported that his sense is that McDaniel would be a candidate in Cleveland should the Dolphins move on and Cleveland's job opens. He added that McDaniel still has some support in Miami, but will it be enough? The situation is fluid. Every day brings new reports, new speculation, new theories about what's going to happen. But let's pump the brakes for a second, because this isn't a done deal, not even close. In fact, as of right now, Mike McDaniel is not the Cleveland Browns head coach. He's not even fired from Miami yet. The whole thing exists in this weird limbo state where everyone's talking about it, where insiders are dropping hints, where fans are debating it on social media, but nothing official has happened. The Dolphins could very well keep McDaniel. Ross might decide that firing another head coach after 3 years sends the wrong message, especially when the team showed fight down the stretch. And even if McDaniel does get let go, there's no guarantee he wants the Cleveland job. There's no guarantee Cleveland even fires Stefanski. That's the first layer of uncertainty in this story. The second layer involves a young quarterback who never thought he'd be in this position. Shadur Sanders was supposed to be a top 10 pick, maybe even top 5. Coming out of Colorado after 2 dominant seasons throwing behind a terrible offensive line, Sanders had the pedigree, the production, the name recognition. His father is Deion Sanders, one of the greatest athletes in NFL history, now coaching at Colorado. Shadur won the Jerry Rice Award, the Deacon Jones Trophy, the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. He completed 74% of his passes as a senior, threw 37 touchdowns against just 10 interceptions, and became second-team All-American and Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. The kid could play, and everyone knew it. Then the draft happened, and everything went sideways.
Round 1 came and went. No Shadur Sanders. Round 2 passed. Still no call. Rounds 3 and 4 disappeared into history, and Sanders was still sitting there, watching other quarterbacks go before him, watching his dreams slip away with every pick. The speculation started immediately. Anonymous approaches leaked to the media that Sanders had the worst interview they'd ever been part of, that he seemed entitled, that he wanted to dictate what he was going to do. One longtime assistant coach told NFL Network that Sanders takes unnecessary sacks, never plays on time, has horrible body language, blames teammates, and isn't even that good. Another AFC executive said their interview didn't go great, that Sanders made them feel small. The smear campaign was brutal. Whether it was fair or not didn't matter. The damage was done. Sanders kept falling. Finally, in the 5th round, at pick 144 overall, the Cleveland Browns traded up with the Seattle Seahawks to grab him. The reaction was mixed. Some people thought Cleveland got a steal, a potential franchise quarterback at a ridiculous discount. Others thought Sanders had too many red flags, too much baggage, too much drama around him and his famous father. But here's the thing about Shadur Sanders. He's a fighter, always has been. He started the season as the 3rd quarterback on the depth chart, behind Joe Flacco and fellow rookie Dylan Gabriel, who the Browns took in the 3rd round. Most people figured Sanders would be inactive all year, maybe get a few garbage time reps if they were lucky. Instead, Flacco struggled and got traded to Cincinnati mid-season. Gabriel got his shot, started 6 games, but then suffered a concussion against the Ravens. Suddenly, Sanders was thrust into action, taking over a broken offense with no preparation, no game plan designed for him, nothing. His first real action was messy. The stats looked ugly. But coaches saw something. They saw competitiveness. They saw arm talent. They saw a kid who didn't back down even when everything was stacked against him. The next week in Las Vegas, Sanders got his first start with a game plan built around him, and he led the Browns to a 24-10 victory, his first NFL win. President Donald Trump, who had called NFL owners stupid for not drafting Sanders earlier, posted "I told you so" on social media. The hype started building. Since then, Sanders has been a roller coaster. One week he throws for 364 yards and 4 total touchdowns against Tennessee, looking like the guy who should have gone in the 1st round. The next week he struggles with interceptions and pocket awareness, looking exactly like a 5th-round developmental project. Through his first 6 starts heading into Week 18, he's completed 57.4% of his passes for 1,289 yards, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and 143 rushing yards, with 1 rushing score. His quarterback rating is 68.51. His QBR is 20.2. The numbers aren't pretty. But here's where Sanders' future gets complicated and where it ties directly into the Mike McDaniel situation. The Browns hold the 6th overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. They also have a second first-round pick from a previous trade. They're positioned to take a quarterback high if they want to, and the speculation is that they absolutely will. Names like Fernando Mendoza from Indiana, Dante Moore from Oregon, and Ty Simpson from Alabama are being thrown around as potential targets. The quarterback class isn't particularly strong at the top, but it's deeper than people think, and Cleveland is desperate for answers at the position. So the question becomes, does Shadur Sanders get a real chance in 2026, or is he just a placeholder until the Browns draft their real guy? Mary Kay Cabot reported that Cleveland hasn't made up their mind yet. She said the Browns need to determine if Sanders is a scheme fit for what's likely to be a new head coach, unless Stefanski and the organization reach some kind of last-minute resolution. She added that if the Browns part ways with Stefanski but keep offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, Sanders might have a decent shot at the job based on the progress he made in his 7 starts and his familiarity with Rees and quarterbacks coach Bill Musgrave. But that's a lot of ifs. If they fire Stefanski, if they keep Rees, if Sanders continues to develop, if they don't love any of the quarterbacks in the draft, if. And if they hire Mike McDaniel, well, that changes everything. McDaniel is an offensive mastermind. His schemes with the San Francisco 49ers and later with the Dolphins became legendary for their use of motion, misdirection, and getting playmakers in space.
He helped turn Tua Tagovailoa into a productive starting quarterback, at least for a couple of years. He designs offenses that maximize player strengths instead of forcing them into rigid systems. He creates easy throws, simplifies reads, builds confidence. For a young quarterback like Shadur Sanders, that kind of coach could be transformational. But here's the flip side. McDaniel doesn't know Sanders. He didn't draft him. He didn't recruit him. He has no loyalty to him. If McDaniel becomes the Browns' head coach, his first priority is installing his offense and finding the quarterback that fits it best. Does that mean Sanders? Maybe, but it could just as easily mean drafting someone new, trading for an established veteran, or bringing in a free agent. McDaniel would have complete control over that decision, and Sanders would have to prove himself all over again to a coach who might prefer to start fresh. There's also the question of whether McDaniel even wants to work with Sanders. Some reports suggest McDaniel might bring his own quarterback to Cleveland. Names like Kyler Murray from Arizona have been floated as possibilities, though that seems like a long shot given Murray's contract. The point is, if McDaniel comes to Cleveland, Sanders' future becomes even more uncertain than it already is.
Meanwhile, Sanders himself is aware of the chaos. After the Browns lost to the Bears, he admitted that half the locker room doesn't know if they'll be back next year. He's living in football purgatory, trying to prove himself while knowing that every throw, every decision, every snap could be evaluated by a coach who isn't even in the building yet. The other complication is Kevin Stefanski himself. Reports from The Athletic and Cleveland.com indicate that the Browns are leaning toward making a coaching change. Diana Russini wrote that Cleveland is leaning toward firing Stefanski, while Albert Breer noted that general manager Andrew Berry is heavily involved in deciding Stefanski's fate and is expected to keep his job. Ian Rappaport reported that owner Jimmy Haslam hasn't made a final decision yet, but that the organization was planning to meet Monday morning after the Week 18 game against Cincinnati to determine the best course of action. Here's the wild part. Stefanski could actually land somewhere else quickly if Cleveland fires him. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported that Stefanski would attract serious interest from the New York Giants, who need an offensive-minded coach to develop first-round rookie quarterback Jackson Dart. Fowler said Stefanski might be the strongest retread candidate in the eyes of many around the league. So the Browns could fire a two-time Coach of the Year who immediately gets hired by another team while they're left scrambling to find a replacement who may or may not be better. And if they go after McDaniel, they're essentially swapping one coach on the hot seat for another. McDaniel's record in Miami is 35-34 in the regular season with an 0-2 playoff record. He's had the same criticisms leveled at him that Stefanski faces in Cleveland. Can't win the big games, offense disappears in the playoffs, questionable game management. So why would Cleveland think McDaniel is the answer when he couldn't consistently win in Miami with better talent? The argument from Browns supporters is that McDaniel never had a stable quarterback situation either. Tua Tagovailoa missed significant time with injuries and concussions. When he played, he was limited by his own physical limitations. McDaniel's offense requires precision timing, quick decision-making, and the ability to execute complex pre-snap motion. If Sanders can develop those skills, or if Cleveland drafts someone who already has them, McDaniel's system could thrive. But there's another wrinkle nobody's talking about enough: Jim Schwartz. The Browns' defensive coordinator has been one of the few bright spots in Cleveland's disaster season. The defense finished fourth in fewest yards allowed, despite the offense constantly putting them in terrible situations. Schwartz is a veteran coach who commands respect, and any new head coach would be smart to keep him. The question is whether McDaniel, known as an offensive specialist who delegates heavily on defense, would be willing to give Schwartz the autonomy he needs, or if Schwartz would even want to work for a new coach after building something in Cleveland. As we head into the final weekend of the regular season, here's where everything stands. Kevin Stefanski is almost certainly coaching his last game with the Browns on Sunday against Cincinnati. The organization is already doing preliminary research on potential replacements, and Mike McDaniel's name is at the top of the list. But McDaniel hasn't been fired by Miami yet, and even if he is, he hasn't indicated any interest in the Cleveland job. Meanwhile, Shadur Sanders is preparing for what could be his final audition, knowing that his performance against the Bengals might determine whether he's the Browns' starter in 2026 or a backup fighting for a roster spot. The Browns could draft a quarterback high, they could sign a veteran in free agency, they could stick with Sanders and Gabriel and have an open competition in training camp. They could hire McDaniel, they could keep Stefanski. They could go in a completely different direction and pursue someone like Bill Belichick, who recently took the North Carolina job but has been rumored to have interest in returning to the NFL. Everything is on the table. Nothing is decided. And that's exactly where Cleveland always seems to find itself, stuck in this perpetual state of maybe, could be, we'll see, let's wait and find out. It's exhausting for the fans, brutal for the players, and emblematic of a franchise that has been trying to figure out the quarterback position for more than 25 years with almost nothing to show for it. The irony is that Sanders actually represents something different for Cleveland. He's the first quarterback they've drafted since Baker Mayfield who has shown legitimate flashes of being a starter. His arm talent is undeniable, his competitiveness is real, his familiarity with playing behind a bad offensive line, which he dealt with at Colorado, prepares him for what he'll face in Cleveland. If the Browns invest in him, develop him properly, give him a real chance with a competent offensive system and some weapons around him, he could become the guy. The problem is that Cleveland has never shown the patience or the competence to do that. They burned through Mayfield, gave up massive assets for Deshaun Watson, only to watch that turn into one of the worst trades in NFL history, and cycled through countless other quarterbacks who were set up to fail from the start. So when we talk about Mike McDaniel potentially coming to Cleveland, when we discuss Shedeur Sanders waiting to find out his future, we have to acknowledge the bigger picture. This isn't just about one coach or one quarterback. It's about an organization that has been dysfunctional for decades, that makes impulsive decisions driven by owner Jimmy Haslam's impatience, that never builds a sustainable culture or long-term vision. McDaniel walking into that environment doesn't guarantee success. It might just make him the next coach to fail in Cleveland and then thrive somewhere else after he leaves. Sanders, meanwhile, is caught in the crossfire. He didn't ask to be drafted by a franchise in chaos. He didn't ask to be thrust into action as a fifth-round pick with no preparation. He didn't ask for his future to be decided by people who might not even be with the organization in a month. But that's the reality he's living, and all he can do is go out against Cincinnati and ball out, show the tape that he's worth keeping, worth developing, worth believing in. The next few days will tell us a lot. If Stefanski is fired Monday, the dominoes start falling quickly. If McDaniel gets let go by Miami, which seems increasingly likely despite their late-season improvement, he becomes the most coveted coaching candidate available. If Sanders lights up the Bengals' defense in the season finale, he strengthens his case to be the guy in 2026. If he struggles, he gives the Browns more reason to look elsewhere.
What we know for certain is that Mike McDaniel is not the Browns coach yet. He might never be. The situation is fluid, complicated, and dependent on multiple factors outside of anyone's direct control. But the possibility exists, the interest is real, and the timing could work out in a way that brings McDaniel to Cleveland and pairs him with Shadur Sanders for a fresh start in 2026. Or it could all fall apart. The Dolphins could keep McDaniel, the Browns could go in a different direction, Sanders could be replaced by a high draft pick. Nothing in Cleveland ever goes according to plan, and there's no reason to think this offseason will be any different. The franchise has broken the hearts of coaches, quarterbacks, and fans for a generation. One more disappointment wouldn't surprise anyone. But maybe, just maybe, this time is different. Maybe McDaniel sees an opportunity in Cleveland that nobody else can see. Maybe Sanders gets the coaching and development he needs to reach his potential. Maybe the Browns finally get it right and build something sustainable instead of chasing short-term fixes that inevitably blow up in their faces. We'll find out soon enough. The clock is ticking. Black Monday is coming. And in Cleveland, nothing is certain except uncertainty itself. The NFL offseason is about to explode with coaching changes, quarterback decisions, and franchise-altering moves. Mike McDaniel's future, Kevin Stefanski's fate, and Shadur Sanders' career trajectory are all hanging in the balance as we head into the final weekend of the season. What happens next will shape the Browns for years to come, and it could determine whether Cleveland finally breaks their curse or continues the cycle of dysfunction that has defined them for decades. One thing's for sure, this story is far from over, and the next chapter is going to be must-see TV. The information presented in this video is based on reports from ESPN, The Athletic, Cleveland.com, and other credible sports media outlets as of early January 2026. Coaching decisions and roster moves are ongoing developments and subject to change. All commentary represents analysis of publicly available information and reporting from established NFL insiders. For the most current updates, please follow official team announcements and verified sports journalists.